Hi there, I'm Laura, and we are here at KubeCon EU 2023, and my guest today is Chris Short. So Chris, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for having me. I'm Chris Short. I work at AWS currently. My role in the community is I'm a co-lead of the sub-project called Contributor Comms, which falls under SIG Contributor Experience. So you think, what does that mean? So there's been many times throughout the Kubernetes project's life where we've needed to get messages out to people.
Right.
And we didn't really have a lot of great mechanisms to do that in mass.
Right.
Right. So when you go back and you look at the Docker shim removal / deprecation, right? We had plenty of notices out there, but not many people actually got the memo.
Right.
So that was one thing that we actually helped with to assemble more content so that people could get the memo. But there was events before that.
Right.
Where it's it'd be great if we had some kind of comms team that the contributors would play with, and not necessarily the kind of scatter of having individual developers tweet out, oh, there's changes to the Kubernetes ecosystem happening.
Right.
So yeah, the comms team was formed, and we've been handling all sorts of communications, regular and irregular, ever since.
Right. Right.
So
okay,
it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, the most recent registry change.
Right.
You and I both had a big part to play in that.
Yeah, we did.
So yeah, my other co-lead is Caslin Fields, who was just selected to be the lead of ContribX, which is really awesome for Caslin. So I'm very happy for her.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's one of those things where normally we can tag team these emergency comms that need to go out sometimes.
Yeah.
And the registry change was another one of those situations where I called for the 5-alarm fire kind of deal, but she was on vacation, and everybody deserves a vacation. So it was one of those things where it's oh, I don't get to hand this off to somebody who's 3 hours offset from me that can take this to the end of the day. I have to work with everybody towards the end of their days on the West Coast to get all this stuff together and out the door.
Right. And we also had scale in the middle of all that too.
Right. There was a ton of people
Everybody
at a
was
conference
busy.
in Southern California, and all sorts of busyness was happening. So the amount of at first it was doom and gloom. The discussions were, how bad are we gonna hurt people? And I'm multiple people had opinions on that.
Right.
And what we should do. And even those communications, even internally, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where it's kind of hey, this is getting a little more heated than I would like.
Let's take a breather.
Deep breath, everybody. And let's think of the best way to get the message out there while hurting as few people as possible. At least their clusters. So we had to come up with some kind of change due to budget limitations.
Right.
So if you're not aware, the CNCF is a foundation under the Linux Foundation and is run completely by donations from members.
Right.
So when GKE and AWS, EKS, and Azure are all pointing to the same place for container images, kates.gcr.io, you can imagine what the Google Cloud bill was.
Just a little high.
Yeah, it was way too high, and we were going to run out of money this year if we didn't do something drastic and immediate. And the longer we waited, the worse action was going to be. So it was okay, what's the least impactful thing we can make people aware of and push forward and get all that messaging out the door in one simple document for everybody that answers everybody's questions, so there's nothing to be asked about the why, the how, or anything. Yeah. So if you actually go to registry.case.io, I thought this was brilliant when it was set up. If you actually go to registry.case.io, it takes you to the GitHub repo.
Oh, does it really?
For the implementation of registry.case.io.
Nice.
So right now, what does that mean? What is registry.case.io? It's actually load balanced between multiple vendor sites, right? So AWS in Detroit, we announced a big donation of $3 million.
Yeah.
that's what this was for.
Right,
It
right,
was
right.
for adding like the AWS side of storage and creating the global, network that we need. Basically a very intense content delivery network and very aware content delivery network, because we don't want people reaching out to AWS necessarily from Google or vice versa to get their images. It's just
doesn't
slower.
make any sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right. So if we can do something that betters the community for it, right, and consolidates effort, and we can then add on additional vendors as they come on board. I'm already talking to people like, have you started working on this?
Let's start going here.
Yeah, there's some yeses all around. It's not just going to be Google and AWS, hopefully this time next year.
Right.
So, but yeah, like the amount of traffic that was being consumed in just egress data was staggeringly expensive.
Right.
Which is also kind of a cloud lesson learned, like
that's true.
You have to
That's
kind
true.
of realize that like at a certain scale, this is going to be untenable.
Right.
And we hit that with the project, which is kind of amazing in its own self.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's great. And yet at the same time, just
terrifying.
like,
Yeah.
people are using
Absolutely
this.
terrifying. Yeah. So, the idea was the redirect, it's going to go in place. It actually took a few days to roll out. We were a little delayed. It's fine. We, fixed things and made things better. And it actually we had like an early failure in a dev region, which found some bugs for us.
Right.
One of those things. So it was great. Like it was a huge team effort, right?
Yeah.
From the SIG infra team, comms, there's so many different SIGs involved in this.
Right.
Because everybody has to put their artifacts somewhere.
Yeah.
And case.gcr.io had been the place for so long.
Right. Exactly.
And there's probably still people pointing there, but their clients are still they're respecting a 301 redirect essentially, and
That's good.
are getting their packages, which is good.
Yeah.
The problem before with doing that was a lot of folks had software clients that didn't respect 301 redirects. Like any redirect was kind of a red flag to like certain security tooling, right? Like, no, this URL should have this cert, this kind of thing, right? Like all that has to match, right? Like you do those checks in your build pipeline for a reason.
Yeah.
And when that fails, we didn't think that this would ever get redirected. Well, you kind of need to assume that that's a possibility.
Right. Exactly.
It's the web.
Yeah.
It's
That makes
inevitable.
sense. Yeah. So I guess one of my questions is for our SIGs or special interest groups, for people who don't really know what that means. Do you really run into the TLDR issue where people aren't really reading all of the stuff that you're trying to put out?
Absolutely.
So like, what are your strategy for dealing with that now?
So it was funny when this group was first formed. It was, it came from the mind of Paris Pittman. So thank you, Paris.
Yay, Paris.
She said, people don't read.
Right.
And it's like, okay, cool. We get that. People don't read. And Kubernetes needed something that was like continuous cadence of communication daily or hourly if need be, right? Like to the point where people went to this place, or this place to get more info about upstream, what was happening. So a Kate's contributor account has been created on Twitter, and there's one on Mastodon somewhere that we're trying to integrate into our workflows right now, but stay tuned. The amount of, like on Wikipedia, they say it once and say it well.
Right.
That kind of mantra, right? Like that doesn't work with our community, sadly, right? Like
unfortunately, no.
We can create one piece of content to point people to read, no problem.
Right.
It's the getting them to read it part, or making them aware of it sometimes. That's the biggest problem.
Right.
So having a Twitter account, having that presence just in the zeitgeist has helped us tremendously.
Right.
But also, kind of cleaning up how we do email, how we do, a lot of other things in the community has helped along the way. And all of that is, one of those things where it's kind of like you have to beat a drum at a certain loudness and cadence to get heard above the fracas.
Right.
So I did some very strategic things to get people aware, in certain places of certain clouds, I kind of know where the Kubernetes people are. So
Right, exactly.
I say,
It
hey,
works.
we need to make sure that y'all are good with this.
Right, exactly.
What is the impact of this on your customers, right? So, reaching out and kind of just being in the community as long as I have has really helped this comms team, I think, kind of establish its presence, because this was really, the registry was the first case where we didn't start the conversation about needing to get communications out. Someone reached out to us.
Which is good.
Yeah, so like establishing that presence in the world is kind of nice, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, we have a team for that. We need to get the word out about this change. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And, here's the why and the how.
Right.
Put it together in a way that people can read. That's not in a GitHub repo, because GitHub repos don't actually perform that well on search engines.
No,
it's shocking.
Kind of surprising, right?
Yeah. So it's almost like the web was built for websites. Or at least search engines were.
Right.
That could be changing though, thankfully. The just being able to like, Kubernetes registry change, and like it goes straight to the article we want you to read, it has tremendous power. So making sure that Kubernetes blogs or the kates.dev site, that's our contributor, basically the contributor experience run developer community site.
Right.
That tells you how to get started in the community and what all the SIGs are and what that means and everything else. So having those two kind of outlets helped a lot. Getting the word out to other Kubernetes vendors helped a lot. And then again, like I said, banging that drum helped a lot. So it's good. It was really good this morning to hear so many people mention it, like in the keynotes.
Right, because it's just gotten socialized.
It like just happened. Right.
Yeah.
So it feels like, at least, right? We did the registry change, and then there was like hard press to KubeCon. So having so many people talk about it on stage today, getting the word out there, it warms my heart, first of all, because this was a significant amount of effort on the community's part.
Right.
But finally, like, these are the last, drum beats that need to get made to get this news out there.
I mean, this is kind of like, I want to say Kubernetes is almost the first, well, maybe not the first open source project, but one of the first open source projects in the world of, we have blog posts, we have Twitter, we have TikTok, we have this, we have that. Whereas like everyone else has always been, here's a mailing list.
Right.
Here's how we get all the word out.
We have that.
Right. We have that. But like people have stopped reading it because flood of emails. There's so much going on.
Yeah.
And also we don't have like a Linus or a Guido.
No, we have a team.
Yeah. We just have a whole bunch of people. There's no like one spokesperson. So in some ways, contributor comms was probably the most important thing that we needed to really drive that whole mass of marketing. I guess you could call it. It's not exactly marketing. It's like,
not.
I don't really know how to call it.
It's more like developer advocacy, but like if you were in an internal facing role.
Yeah. Right. Like, I'm thinking like socialization of an idea or thing that's going on, kind of thing. So.
Yeah. So it like it's interesting. When the team was formed, it was called a marketing team.
Yeah, it's not marketing.
And that really didn't fit what we did very well, and we noticed that we weren't attracting new contributors like we thought we would.
Because people
don't want to necessarily associate marketing with an open source project. And, it was kind of a misalignment. I agree. But we had to call it something. We didn't have anything better. Right. So when we did come up with something better, we changed the name, Contributor Comms, which, is essentially getting the word out there on behalf of the Kubernetes project. Right. Which powers a lot now. So getting that word out there is vitally important.
And I mean, y'all are growing too, right?
Yes,
like you're getting a lot of people showing up now.
And we've had people show up and then move on to other things in the project, and that feels good. But now we've got new people coming in. We are always welcome the new people. Comms is a great place to learn about the community while also being involved in it.
Right.
I feel
exactly.
Like so. Kubernetes contributions, where do I get started? A lot of people say go start in docs and work in SIG docs, but for a lot of people it's hard to get in to SIG docs because there are some barriers to entry. Like you have to understand Hugo, you have to understand how the website's built,
GitHub.
There's, you have to understand all those things. So if you're just picking up those skills,
Right.
like they need somebody who can work quickly and, can you make this change or do this edit or, whatever, write this piece, translate, so forth, so on. And, it's really important that docs are written by people that are trusted too. So
Right. Yeah.
they have to be intelligent. So if you're brand new to the community and you're starting out, there's also this other path, which,
Right.
to your point, is unique for
Yeah.
an open source project as large as Kubernetes.
Mm-hmm.
Going the comms route and then, learning how we work, because we do everything through GitHub too.
Right.
And for a while, we actually had our tweets going out through GitHub, but that has become
APIs.
Yeah, things have happened.
Things have happened is probably like the tagline for all of 2022, wasn't it?
God, it's just nonstop.
Things have happened.
Mm-hmm. It's not like 2023 is any slower. It's just like less bad thing.
Well, we just happen to be still in the middle of it, so
Right.
maybe we'll realize that in December and go, yeah, things also happened.
Yes.
Yay.
Always things happening.
Yeah.
So
Anyway.
the new contributor experience I think that we bring is pretty awesome because you don't have to come on camera.
Yeah.
You can just say hi and chat.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of linger around for a couple meetings and then,
Yep.
DM in our Slack channel
Yeah.
and say, hey, I've watched a few meetings. I think this is where I want to work on.
Yeah.
If it's blog post writing, if it's, getting yourself educated on, how the writing process works internally,
Mhm.
the editing process, all that stuff, right? Like, we need people like that.
Yeah.
Like, Federico, he does an amazing job of getting blogs kind of ship-shape and then out the door.
Right.
And anybody can contribute a blog post, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, all you have to do is look at our role book and say, oh, here's a good list of questions to ask SIG leads.
Mm-hmm.
And you could write a SIG profile, for example.
Right.
And even update an existing SIG profile if you want to, like, if you think that's where you're going to contribute once you're smarter in the community and, have onboarded.
Right.
You can kind of start by talking about it first.
Yeah.
And learning about it as you go to write content for
Yeah.
a blog. And that blog is recognized by the entire Kubernetes community, which is amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Right.
it's also a way to get to know the SIG. If that's a SIG you really want to join, but
Yep.
you're a little uncomfortable, you can start to get to know people,
Yes.
then go through. Yeah.
We're
It's
all
really a great
humans in the Kubernetes community, but
Yeah.
sometimes I get it.
It's scary.
I get it.
Yeah.
Right? Like some people you feel intimidated by it. Knowledge-wise, of course I feel intimidated by some people still.
Yeah.
But they're all my friends, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's not
Exactly.
It's not an unwelcoming community. We don't have the Torvalds-esque moments like at all.
No, not really. No. Yeah.
It's
That's
kind of
definitely.
nice.
Yeah. It's a
So
big
yeah, like
community.
show up. Our meetings are on Fridays at 11 Eastern. I think they're canceled next week. Or
I hope they are.
yeah. So yeah, we
Not this
actually,
week, not next week,
Yeah, but
the week after.
so basically we have like a meeting every week. We talk about what we're working on. We're in the process of transitioning over to like a GitHub project board for everything. And
Right.
we're almost done with that. So like there's work on the board you could pick up if you feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
You can check us out. You can go to the community repo for Kubernetes, and then underneath communication, there's a contributor comms section, and you can see everything that we do there. And join us, and we'll get you started in the community or working on something you want in the community, because we can kind of get you pointed in the right directions too. It's kind of nice because we do have a lot of, like myself and Kaz, we've been around ContribX a long time, so we understand that there's a team for Slack, a team for GitHub, a team for this, a team for that. So if you want to work on some of the underneathings of the Kubernetes community, we can point you in the right direction too.
Yeah, that
It's
makes
great.
sense.
Like you can just ping this, Twitter account or anybody that retweets that Twitter account and probably get a good response.
Right, exactly, because we're watching, we're
Right.
waiting to see.
Yeah.
So people can find us through Twitter.
Twitter, Kate's
Mastodon,
contributors.
technically.
Yes. Kate's contributors everywhere on
Yeah.
social.
So Kate
KASC contributors.
Contributors, yeah.
Yeah.
Capital C contributors. Well, I
Yeah.
guess it doesn't really matter because
It doesn't, but technically it's capital K, capital C. Kate's
But yeah.
contributors.
Well, yeah, when we say Kate's, it's K, the number 8, and then S.
Mhm.
So they can find you there. They can also find the
Kubernetes dev site.
Kubernetes dev site, and then
Yep.
we have the email list, which is the Contrabex email list,
Yes.
which is contributor experience just contracted. So I'm not going to
Yes.
spell right now because I
Don't.
can't.
Please.
But-
yeah.
But yeah, you can find that on the Kubernetes.dev site
Exactly.
and just look for the email list, and the email list gets the calendar, which has the calendar invite
Right.
to get to the weekly meeting.
Bingo.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I know it sounds
But
like
if
a
you
lot.
go to caves.dev/resources, you're good.
Yeah, it explains
Right.
it all.
Explains
Explains
it
how to
all.
get it all.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and like, also as part of, kind of our continuing role, we like to join release teams,
Yeah.
contributor summit teams, so that we can help the communication process. I forgot to
Right.
mention that earlier. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I was comms lead for the Kubernetes contributor summit. Even
Yeah.
though I knew I couldn't be there, I knew I could do comms.
Right.
You
And,
know?
and that's perfectly fine because you
Right.
don't have to be there to do the comms. And in fact, actually, we have part of the team who couldn't be here
Right.
catching all of the tweets that had a misscheduling due to
Yes, that's a
chaos
good point. I
around
forgot.
the, what was
Yeah.
it, the time zone
Time
issue?
zone changes. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So, because that happens because time zones
Yes.
are hard.
Time zones are hard because we make them so.
Yes, exactly. Because
yeah.
like, hey, let's shift time
Re-
zones here and there.
Read your local TZ data file.
Yes.
You can read the history about your time zone. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, not
Always
funny,
fun.
but like, it's like, how did my time zone end up like this? Oh, it's there.
And it's always a little wild. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I mean, contributor comms can do a lot of things,
Mhm.
and you don't necessarily always have to be present
No.
to be engaged.
No,
which is
we
really
can definitely
nice.
work asynchronously, right?
Right.
That
exactly.
was the goal from day one, was being like, someone can start this in one time zone and someone
Yep.
else can pick this up in another time zone. And
Right.
It's fine. Just as
Yeah.
long as, we have our certain roles
Mhm.
and that those individual teams of people in that role, they can work asynchronously all together. It's amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I guess the one question I guess I would ask is if someone does not speak English very well.
That has always been a problem for our community, I feel like.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of why I'm
Um,
bringing it up. So is it one of those cases that if someone wants to join but is having some trouble with English, is this a space for them, or is this more
This
like
could be a space for them potentially.
yeah? Because there are
Um,
people who are helping in different languages, but
Right. Docs would be the place
docs
for
would
that.
probably be better right
So
now.
there's a whole team of like translators on the docs
Right.
team. So like we just added the Hindi language to the docs.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably plenty of more work to do in that language.
Yeah.
Highly recommend if you are willing to, basically translate English to Hindi or whatever
Yeah.
region you're in and the language you speak.
Right.
Like we would welcome your help in SIG docs. It would be tremendously helpful. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if anybody's listening. I mean, why would you be listening to an English podcast? But maybe you're good at listening, but maybe not so much speaking or writing it. So
Maybe
just in
ChatGPT
case.
did something with it. Who knows?
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're listening, just so that you know, you also are still welcome. But
Yes.
we just need to try to find you the right place as we get everybody comfortable with different languages.
Right, exactly. And, setting the time zone by default to UTC and Kubernetes, I think, speaks to the global nature of the project.
Right, exactly.
Like now, as opposed to when it was first created. But now we
Right.
have to embrace the global nature of the globe.
Right,
As
exactly.
a project, right?
Yeah.
So we've got to make it friendly to other languages, other regions,
Right.
We're at KubeCon EU for a reason.
Right,
So,
exactly.
CNCF is working very hard this year on contributor days, or not contributor, community days.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of C words in our
I
community.
know,
Uh,
so many.
Community days are essentially like independently run events, kind of like DevOps days, but
Yeah.
for Kubernetes or cloud native projects. It's pretty cool.
Mhm.
But yeah, CNCF's putting a lot of investment into more outreach. If you saw the list of ambassadors listed yesterday,
Yeah, there
I'm
were
not
quite a
one
few.
of them.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see it's literally the most diverse group of people I think they could assemble.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to sit this one out
Yeah.
because now there's cycles and everything
Mhm.
to welcome in a more diverse group of people. Because I think
Right.
that's probably what I should be doing is
Yeah.
making way for other folks, you know,
Yeah.
and kind of helping them scale up in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So at some point, you and I ought to talk a little bit about that handoff discussion about how,
Yes.
like
how to encourage that
without necessarily feeling like you're abandoning the community. Yes.
Yes.
Because actually, I'm doing that currently in my current community back home. Is we're working on the how do you hand off. How do you handle burnout? How do you handle all of this in your communities? At some point, you and I will have to sit down and have a much longer conversation.
Just wrote a CFP about burnout. Literally. And you know what's funny?
So did I.
Kaslin asked me to write it. That's what's
Oh,
funny.
wow.
So
Okay.
she was like, hey, DevOps Day Seattle, I'm an organizer for that. We would love to have you talk about burnout since you seem to know so much about it.
That's great.
It's
That's
like,
great.
Oh, I'm the expert on burnout?
Wait
That's probably
a
not a
minute.
good thing, is it? So unhealthy patterns are just a normal thing in my life, I think.
Well, more like you've gone through them. It's kind of like the senior engineer discussion, right? Like the
maybe,
senior
yeah.
engineers have gone through it, therefore it's our responsibility to
Yes.
talk about it and teach about it. I'm actually going to be doing one on organizer burnout and how do you transition your communities.
Oh, yeah.
Mine got accepted, so
Oh, good.
hopefully that talk will be written soon.
So
Just hiding from that one.
here's a tip.
Oh, boy.
CFP writing tip. Write the abstract
Yeah.
after you create an outline.
Yes.
Create
absolutely.
an organized outline, then write your abstract. That way the talk is basically going to write itself.
Oh yeah, and
All you have to do is put together the words at that point.
yeah. See, to me, actually, I always submit my outline with the CFP.
Same.
Because then somebody knows exactly what they're getting out of
Right.
my talk,
Right.
whether it's written or not written yet. It's done. But
Yeah.
we'll
can talk about
we'll talk
all
about that later,
yeah.
and maybe in a different conversation. We're kind of focusing on Kubernetes here in Cloud
Yes.
Native, but we are just about at time. So I want to thank you so much for joining me.
Thank
Any
you for having me.
last message you want to send out to the world? This will probably get published next week.
Oh, wow.
We're
Gotta turn this
trying.
around fast.
We're trying.
Okay, cool.
Maybe.
Check out kates.dev. Kate, the letter K, the number 8, the letter S.dev.
Right.
That'll redirect you to all the places. We just finished our contributor summit, so you missed that, but learn about it for Chicago.
Yeah.
And
Or Paris if you
Or
can't come to
yeah.
North America.
Right. So yeah, it will guide you to the right places. If you
Mhm.
want to follow me as Chris Short on Twitter. So
Yeah.
2 S's there in the middle.
Yeah,
Don't be
don't forget
confused.
one.
Don't forget one. And
All right.
yeah, stay safe out there.